Agriculture, Natural Resources, and finally I just walked out on, no, I did not. They knew I was. But in any event, appreciate you being here on time. We have today one item we will start with, and we'll see if we can get to another item. Hearing on Senate Bill 89. So we will open the hearing on Senate Bill 89 with an overview of the legislation from our reviser of statutes. Tamara Lawrence, Reviser Lawrence, welcome to the committee. Well, I guess you're always here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, committee. You should have access to a memorandum from the revisor's office that explains the details of this bill. Senate Bill 89 would amend the State Poultry Disease Control Act, which requires that all hatcheries, hatchery-supplied flocks, poultry entered in public exhibits, and pullorum typhoid testing comply with the National Poultry Improvement Plan. I just want a note on this act. This went into effect January 1, 1985, and has not been substantively touched since. So just a fun little fact for you. Current law provides that no poultry may be shipped into Kansas unless it is from a source that is designated pullorum typhoid clean or the equivalent. Senate Bill 89 would prohibit the shipment of poultry into Kansas unless it meets the National Poultry Improvement Plan requirements. The bill would authorize the Animal Health Commissioner to adopt rules and regulations for the purpose of establishing certain fees. So the bill would provide an annual plan participation fee could not exceed $50. There would also be an annual certification for testing and diagnostic services related to pullorum typhoid or fowl typhoid. The fee for that certification also could not exceed $50. And then if a person requests testing or diagnostic services, that person would be required to pay a fee not to exceed $100 per visit to each location that's participating in the plan. The bill would authorize the commissioner to revoke plan participation for failure to pay the annual fee within a 60-day grace period. And finally, there are updates to definitions and some technical cleanup. The bill would take effect on July 1 upon publication in the statute book. And I will note that if this bill sounds familiar, it is similar to a House bill from last year that did not fully make it through the process. And I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Do you recall that House bill number?
2608.
And this is exact language or very similar?
It is similar, but not exactly the same.
Okay, and we trust the agency will tell us that. Questions of our reviser committee? Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Mr. Leader, and thank you for your presentation. I see the fee is $50, and I don't see what it was before. Did we have a fee before, or is this increasing it, or what?
I don't believe there was a fee.
Okay, thank you.
And that would be a question, Chairman Reichman, since you called me leader, but in any event, for the agency most likely, we'll let the agency, and I appreciate you asking it because I have often been of the opinion that asking our staff questions gives the conferees an opportunity to be prepared to answer the question. That's right, and so you are way ahead, so you get a gold star for the beginning of the day. Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we forgive you for the tardiness today. Reviser Lawrence, on there's a new language about rules and regs for annual fees. Is that a separate per head fee, or is that just up to setting that $50 participation fee?
Yes, so it says a fee of not to exceed $50.
In line 7, page 2? That's the only fee that's talked about. There's not like if you have like a per head poultry fee to participate or anything on top of the participation fee. Does that make?
Yeah, so what you're looking at in section 2 there is just the part that allows the commissioner through rules and regulations to establish these fees, and then the fees are touched on kind of throughout the bill. So you can.
Just the one annual fee.
For plan participation, yes. No? I am wrong, and this might be a great question to ask the department.
Thank you.
Again, thanks for the question, Senator, because that way the agency can help us make certain we understand. Additional questions of our reviser. All right, none. Seeing none, thank you. Our first conferee today will be Deputy Secretary Kelsey Olson from the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Welcome to the committee, and you've already heard some questions, so at some point during your testimony, maybe at the end, whenever you determine, might answer those questions.
Well, thank you, Chairman Peck and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to support Senate Bill 89. Revisor Lawrence did a great job of laying out some of the components of the bill, but I wanted to give you a little bit more about the background of the National Poultry Improvement Program. So in 1935 is when the National Poultry Improvement Program actually started. And this program was generated from a need from the poultry industry to help manage some of the diseases that they were facing at the time. Primarily, Pulmonary typhoid is the primary disease that was the impetus for starting the Poultry Improvement Program. This disease has a mortality rate for chicks of over 80% if they become infected with it. And an affected bird can recover, however, then can transmit the disease to its offspring. So by reducing this disease threat, this really allowed the poultry industry to take off and to grow, to be able to commercialize egg production and broiler production as we know it today. NPIP is a cooperative agreement between federal and states where the objective is to ensure that there's effective testing and improvement of the poultry and poultry products based on the established standards that the program outlines. Majority of the United States participates in the NPIP program, and that means that states requiring the NPIP program, if in order for a poultry product to be shipped into that state, it has to be tested and to be proven negative of the disease. So that's where our cooperative partnership comes into play, where an entity, whether it's an egg layer or a broiler facility that wants to ship their products across state lines, will ask to be tested on it's an every 3-year basis to determine whether their flock is Pulmonary typhoid free. Also, it's important to note that many of our trading partners around the globe also expect this NPIP certification in order to trade poultry products across international borders. Let me see, okay. As we move through, so we did enact the act in 1985. However, many entities were participating in the poultry NPIP program as far back as 1945. And it's our Division of Animal Health that oversees this program. We've been providing these services to our poultry industry since the early 80s. However, we've not had a fee associated with that for the duration of this program. With me today is also our Animal Health Commissioner, Dr. Sarah McReynolds. She will be around later for technical questions if you want to know more. She's really overseen the programs during her tenure at the agency. So SB 89 actually lays out a couple different fees. So there is a participant fee. As I mentioned, the poultry facilities are required to be tested every 3 years. And so there would be a fee to be a participant in that fee. Again, this is a voluntary program. However, many of the states expect it when it comes to the poultry industry. That participation fee would not exceed $50. The one key piece that we changed from last year's House bill to this year's bill was clarifying some of the language in regards to the rules and regulations that the Animal Health Commissioner could promulgate on this statute. I know there had been a few questions that had come up on the House side. We had tried to make some amendments, but ultimately we tweaked it for this version. There is an option. So some of our larger facilities will actually choose to have someone become a certified tester within their employees. So there is a fee that outlines that. That fee is not to exceed $50 as well for a certified tester. And then a service fee if we have to go out to do multiple locations, a service fee that would not exceed $100 per location for those testing and those supplies that we would be doing to conduct those activities. Again, this is a service that we have been providing for the poultry industry for a number of years, and we've not had a fee up until this point. We do have a relatively small poultry industry, but it's still significant to the tune of around $272 million of poultry production on an annual year. And our poultry industry ranges from commercial egg layers to game bird breeders, turkey growers, as well as some poultry genetic companies as well. So it is quite diverse. It's not an industry that we routinely talk about, but certainly it is a significant industry to those that participate in it. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to testify on the bill, and I'd stand for any questions.
So you have been providing the service, pardon me, for several years with no fee to the poultry industry. So the cost of the program has been being borne by the agency, correct?
That is correct. Our animal health division is funded with federal funds, some state, a little bit of SGF, as well as some animal disease control funds, of which other livestock industries pay into for various licenses.
And you have in the legislation, because the department is the ones that basically, if you will, determined most of the language, not to exceed $50 is what would be the fee. If Senate Bill 89 becomes law, what is the planned current fee?
As an agency, we've talked about varying rates between $30 and $40, somewhere to establish that, but we haven't settled on an exact number. I believe in the fiscal note, we did put in there at the full amount what that would be based on the anticipated participation. However, we do not anticipate going to the full amount at this point in time.
But you have it, as is frequently the case, at a level a little higher than you planned for future increases. Okay, help the chair understand there are different fees mentioned. There's not to exceed $50 mentioned more than once on page 2 and then on page 3. And then apparently there is another fee not to exceed $100 per visit to each location. So if you don't mind, just walk us through a scenario on, I pay a $50 fee as a poultry owner, and what do I get for that? And then do you charge another fee if you actually come to the facility?
Certainly. So first off, there's a fee to be a participant, to be recognized as an MPIP participant in the state. That is outlined in page 2, I believe it's section 4 of the annual participation fee for this plan. Then, so that would be to acknowledge, to register the locations, to identify those groups that are major poultry entities that are wanting to participate in this. That is key, is because as we've been dealing with high-path avian influenza, which I want to be clear, testing for high-path avian influenza is not part of this, and as part of our testing that we do for that regulatory function, that is outside of this NPIP plan. But registering the locations is vital, because as we've had to, when we've had positive HPI facilities that have come, that have shown the virus, we then have to do additional work of trying to identify who might be within a radius that would potentially need to be quarantined, or we might need to look at what activities have happened on that facility. So helping register helps ease understanding where those facilities are at. We've continually seen an increase in contract broiler growers in the state, especially in South Central Kansas and a little bit in the Southwest. And so understanding where those locations are will allow us to do additional work with more ease and with a more rapid approach. So that's the first fee that's identified. Then if we look at section 6 on page 3, lines 11 through 17, that refers to the certification. So someone can be certified. Again, if we have a larger facility who wants to do their own testing, they can become certified in order to do those, to conduct those tests for themselves. And there's a nominal fee there for that work. As we move down on page 3, there in section B, lines 26 through 31, there is, if a facility requests us to come out and do tests, which could be up to 300 tests, 300 birds we'd have to test. There's a ratio based on how many birds that they have, how many tests have to be conducted, but it can go up to 300 tests. We would be asking to be able to charge for fees associated with that cost per location. So if they have one facility in Reno County and one facility in Rice County, those would be considered 2 separate locations. If they have multiple barns on one premise that operates as one entity, that would be considered one location. But the serum that is used to conduct the test to determine whether Pulmonary typhoid is present, we've seen that cost go up immensely for a very small vial. And we've been paying for that out of our animal disease control funds without them being able to supplement or us to recover any of the costs that we incur for conducting this program. So hopefully that outlines those 3 components.
That does help. When I spend time reading the legislation, there's a participation fee, a certification fee, and then a location visit fee is the way I'm going to classify it.
That's correct.
Okay. Question committee, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And forgive me, what I'm going to ask you probably isn't in this here, but if we have a flock that is tested and found positive of the 2 typhoids that you've listed here, what happens?
So there's a process that they can go through for treatment, and the most likely would be for eradication of those animals that are found to be positive, because again, if they have egg layers that are laying eggs, those eggs could then be passed that disease down. So the most swift movement is to eradicate the disease on that location by either euthanizing or, I mean, again, if it has high mortality rates, so likely it's going to move very rapidly through their flock.
Let's assume they do have it in a flock, and you haven't been out to test yet, and they send that to the processor. Could they send their birds to a processor? What does it do to humans?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Alley, I appreciate the question. I actually don't have that information. I would, if you're comfortable, I'd defer to our Assistant Animal Health Commissioner, or I can bring that information to the committee following, but I apologize, I don't know that offhand.
Well, my concern is if we do have and we may get more information later, but if we do have a outbreak in a flock of birds, and they were in the eggs, could that infect humans? Number one question. Number two, if they were to take those and say, well, we're going to ship these off and process them rather than test them, then we need to know what that could what happens to humans. That's my question. Thank you very much.
So you're saying you have someone that might could answer Senator Alley's question with you today?
I do, if you're comfortable with
I would
allowing
like
her
to
up.
get an answer as well, and probably other members on the committee. So let's get that question answered, then we'll get right back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Sarah McReynolds. I serve as the Assistant Animal Health Commissioner within the Division of Animal Health. And this is not a disease that infected the food supply. It mainly affected the birds that were laying the hatching eggs. So there would not be an impact to the food supply if this would happen.
I'm at ease there. However, the word typhoid does scare me a little bit.
Absolutely. And there are other salmonella that certainly do affect the food supply, but this type of strain is not going to be a food supply issue. Mm-hmm.
And while she is at the Mike Committee, do you have questions of the animal health lady? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your answer for Senator Alley. And Deputy Secretary, if you will step back up, Senator Starnes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here. My only question is, if I'm understanding this correctly, what type of wait time would there be for them to be tested? So you have this concern, you want to get it taken care of. And to me, it makes sense, obviously, for the $50 charge to have somebody on site trained to do it and take care of it. And so several questions. So the first, how long's the wait time? And then if these people are certified, then their ability to get whatever they need to help solve this problem, they're able to do that by having this certification? Thank you.
Certainly. So the wait time is very low. What typically has caused the biggest delay, if someone calls in and needs to have their testing conducted for them, the wait is usually dictated about whether or not we have the testing serum on hand and how much we have on hand. Again, it's a costly serum, and so we try to keep what we need in a relatively timely manner. So we do have a number of state vets stationed across the state that provide coverage for their area of which they service. And so if we have the serum on hand, it's very likely they can come out within the week or even sooner if there's an urgent matter. Again, our poultry industry is very accustomed to ensuring that they have routine certificates up to date for their testing. And so it's not usually an urgent matter, but it can be conducted in an urgent manner if need be.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Deputy Secretary. Thank you for your presentation. I got a couple questions. When you set those fees at 50, 50, and 100, was there any kind of functional cost analysis? I mean, I'm thinking that's not going to cover the cost that's really happening, number one. Number two, who pays the difference?
So I appreciate the question. We did look at some of the costs that are associated with our routine testing and the surveillance and what it costs us to send one of our veterinarians out there. And also in conversations with our poultry industry over the last couple of years, we talked around what would be something that would be noticeable but not impactful in a negative sense. I'll be honest, we are probably not going to be recouping all of our costs with these fees. But at the same time, we have a relatively small poultry industry, and so to be able to offset the entire cost of perhaps one veterinarian for this work would not be equivalent to the volume of work that they would be doing on a yearly basis. So we tried to find something that would be impactful and meaningful to our bottom line as we make sure that we use our fee funds and our taxpayer dollars judiciously, but also something that has somewhat of a, is on the radar of the poultry industry, but is not detrimental to their business.
So if it doesn't cover the cost, which I agree with that, who pays the difference then? I mean, where's the money come from?
So this program has been funded, the services have been funded with animal disease control funds up to this point. And our other livestock industries have largely fitted that bill or offset those costs since we've been doing this work.
Also, this one might go back to the other lady. The spread of the disease, when you have these chickens that are in a barn, they never get out. They're literally in this barn all the time. And here's where I'm going with this. Can waterfowl carry this disease? Let's say that you have a flock of ducks come in next to the barn, and do their business, and then somehow that carries into the barn. Or turkeys, that kind of thing. I was wondering if that was kind of thing. So I'm wondering, this spread of disease, is this something that can affect other animals? That's mine. And then the other part is that you're saying this is voluntary. Part of me says, is that a good thing or should it be required? So just, you might comment on those two things.
Certainly, I appreciate those questions. I'll try to capture them. So it is a voluntary program, but as a whole, the poultry industry in the United States and across the globe have adopted these practices because of the potential detriment that Pulmonary typhoid presents to the industry. So it is, while it is voluntary, it's something that the group actually, like, it came from producers. It was a producer-led initiative originally because they were struggling so much with the impact of that disease. As for how it's transferred, I would have to defer to our veterinarian in that regard. I would say it's not common to find these cases anymore because of this program. And the last case we could find in the United States was in 2011. But again, I can't speak to how that disease moves or what transfers it. I would defer to Dr. McReynolds if the chair is interested.
If we can get an answer from her, that would be fine.
So it's a disease that mainly will transmit through the eggs. So that's why we don't see that transmission typically from wild birds or other turkeys or anything like that, because it's mainly through the hatching egg. And I would also comment, right now, 50 of our participating flocks are actually backyard flocks. So this isn't just for the commercial industry.
Senator Francisco, Deputy Secretary, if you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in this bill, you're striking the definition of hatchery and also references to hatcheries being designated as national plan hatcheries. Can you give me any background about why that change was made?
I don't have any information on that at this time. I know that was something that our legal team worked on when they were looking at the bill overall, but I'll have to get back to you on that.
Thank you. I would appreciate that because there still are references. This is page 2, line 38, to all hatcheries. So we haven't eliminated those references. And then we'll talk to the reviser after we hear from you about whether we still need that definition because of that. But another question is, this is on page 2, lines 28 through 30. I see that you're changing the wording "or which meets the equivalent" to "meeting requirements equivalent to the plan." But all of a sudden, so poultry can be shipped into Kansas if it's part of this plan or if it meets requirements equivalent to those in the plan. So how do you determine that if somebody's not registered? And why wouldn't somebody then just say, oh, I'm going to follow this plan but not pay the $50?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer the latter, but what I can speak to is, so participants of the plan, like when animals are transported across state lines, there is a certificate of veterinary inspection that is supposed to accompany them. In the case of poultry, whether someone is shipping them or personally moving their birds across state lines, maybe even to attend a poultry exhibition, they would be expected to have those documentations on hand with them to determine that they were, an NPIP participant and have been cleared of the disease. That is the expectation in the poultry industry. That's part of the plan requirements. And so as we've laid out there, that would just be, that's the language that we're going forward for this year for this bill. I don't know if there was cleanup, the specific words chosen, I can't speak to that, but the intent, that was what our intentions were.
So with regard to the flock that is being taken to a public exhibition, they have to participate in the plan. Right? It's on line 3. Come from a flock of poultry that participates in the plan as in compliant. So if you're doing an exhibition, you have to be in the plan, but if you're just moving poultry for sale, you don't have to participate in the plan?
No, you still do. If you are shipping birds across state lines, you would, and even including poultry exhibitions.
Again, I understand it includes poultry exhibitions. I'm just saying, I'm wondering why we don't just say because you have to do it for a poultry exhibition, why don't we just say that no poultry may be shipped into Kansas other from a source that is a planned participant?
We could consider that language if we needed to amend it. I would have to work with the reviser and our attorneys to make sure, but I think that would also be sufficient.
Thank you. I'm just concerned that you say it's equivalent to the plan, but you wouldn't have to be a plan participant. And if the idea is to have fees that cover this, I'd like them to participate, I guess, or figure that out. Thank you.
Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to that point, you might exercise some caution. I'd rather not hear from all of our backyard flocks that we've prohibited them from importing poultry unless they become planned participants. So we could be judicious in exploring that. Thank you.
Appreciate that comment. Additional questions of Deputy Secretary? I do have one final question because you never know when you get to the floor what kind of questions may be asked. But I notice in section 1, page 1, on line 33, or in lines 30 through 34, it talks about the definition of poultry, but does not include doves or pigeons. So doves or pigeons are not defined or classified as poultry. Where do they fall in?
I will have to check on that. I do not know how they are defined in the state, but they are not subject to the NPIP program based at the federal level that we administer.
Okay, well, I can understand that, but that would have been my answer on the floor. I don't know. I don't know what doves and pigeons are. Okay.
We can try to track that down for you.
Just in case. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Our next conferee committee is Taylor. I'm sorry, is it Nickel or Nickel?
Nickel like the coin.
I like the
Just
coin, just
spelled a little
spelled
different.
wrong.
Yeah.
But anyway, the director of the Stock Growers Division of Kansas Livestock Association, welcome to the committee.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Peck and members of the committee for allowing the Kansas Livestock Association the opportunity to testify on the bill. And just a little background in case you're not fully aware what the Kansas Livestock Association is. We are a 5,700 member organization our members are involved in the livestock industry across the state. So me, myself, I work with the cow-calf members across the state. We have plenty of feed yards that are members, several dairies, and a few swine operations as well. So we kind of cover all of the livestock folks across the state, and we're happy to stand up here and support a Senate Bill 89. We have policy on the books that supports funding the KDA's Department of Animal Health through the state general fund or through a broad-based fee collection system that's funded proportionately for how those species pay into that fee and the services that are provided on behalf of the department. We believe that Senate Bill 89 would help the agency cover costs that they're incurring to do the testing for these flocks, like the Deputy Secretary has mentioned. She did a great job of covering that. Most of those testings, like she said, are being funded through the Animal Disease Control Fund. So I really want to hit on, okay, well, what is funding the Animal Disease Control Fund? And that is mainly livestock and swine operations. I think there's a few other funding sources, but most of the fees that we pay in are going into that fund. And yes, we have some things that are covered by that fund, but we have a problem when, this poultry programs are being funded through it, but they're not having to pay in as well. And so we like to see that this bill would ensure that they're also paying fees into that fund as well for the services they provide. And just a few examples of some of the different things that the livestock industry pays into that fund. Livestock auction markets, services that are provided there, those fees are in that fund. Livestock dealer's license, certificates of veterinary inspection, or better known as health papers in layman's terms, and then calf hood vaccination tags are just a few examples of what is paid in. Again, I appreciate being able here to stand up and support on behalf of KLA. We hope that you would recommend this bill favorably for passage so that all species are remitting fees proportionately. Thank you.
Appreciate your testimony. Questions, committee? I don't know why in the world we don't have questions for you, but I don't even have any questions. But
Well, I appreciate it. I'll take it easy.
I got you. All right, committee, those two were our only conferees as proponents. No written, no neutral, no opposition testimony. So we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 89. And if you have questions that you see in the legislation of any of the interested stakeholders, reach out to them. They're always glad to answer questions. I will turn your attention, committee, to, we've got some time, to Senate Bill 58, which should be in your folder. And since it's been a little while, we will just ask for a brief overview from our reviser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 58 is the bill that would address multi-year flex accounts. The bill would modify the MIFA quantity allocation calculation. So there would only be that one calculation in the bill. Additionally, the bill does some simplifying and reorganizing. And there was also a couple of changes that I mentioned during the hearing, including a report to the legislature instead of being annual would be every 3 years under this bill. And I'll be happy to answer questions.
Committee, do you have questions of our reviser? Seeing none, what is your pleasure, committee? I understand there may be an amendment. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did ask our reviser to draft an amendment, and I'll ask her to pass that out.
Senator Francisco, if you would explain your amendment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a change just on page 6 of the bill, and I appreciate all the work that was done on the change to the multi-flex account. This would simply change the date and sequence for the reports. So one concern I have, we're looking at our calendar this year. Here it is early in February. If we got information that a committee wanted to react to, it would be almost impossible to get a bill drafted and worked with that information. It's probably difficult as it is, but so I was suggesting that that report be due on or before January 15th, and chose the year 2029 because that would be the first year of a senator's 4-year term. And then that report, if it's due every 4 years, would consistently be given to those committee chairs at the beginning of a Senate term, which would also be the beginning of one of the alternating House terms.
Senator Francisco, is that your phone? No, I know it's not. It's just the vice chair violated the Senate rules with not having, so the committee, that is a reminder, when you come into the committee room, yes. A question, which it is a written report, so it would be something that we'll just use this committee, the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee chair would receive the written report, and if the chair determined that the standing committee should receive a verbal, that could be after the 15th. And I'm going to ask you, or I could ask the reviser, would that be the correct? I'm just thinking sometimes session doesn't start until January the 14th. It can start as late as January the 14th. So the 15th is the first day after session started for a new Senate term, but it's strictly written, not oral, correct? That's my understanding, okay.
Yes, and I have not changed that as part of the requirement.
Right, okay. Questions on the amendment before she hasn't moved. Let's go ahead and have a motion and then a second, then we will discuss the proposed amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move my amendment.
Okay, she would move that we amend Senate Bill 58. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Titus. Okay, discussion on the motion. See, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question is, what risk are we going 4 years instead of 3?
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a chance to talk to Senator Titus because I knew he had done some work on this bill, and he might be better in responding to that.
So this, thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Francisco. This bill went into effect in some form or another in 2001 and has had an annual report, and there's never been found to be a negative impact over all of those annual reports. So it was determined, we're very comfortable with where the program is. It's not, it helps people, it doesn't hurt the water supply, and it just didn't seem necessary to be told that every year.
Right, but we're changing it. We had it here 3 years, going to 4 is.
Senator Francisco thought it'd be better to align it with the beginning of a Senate term. If we wanted to change it, it would be easier rather than falling in the last year of a Senate term at some point.
Additional questions, committee? All right, seeing none, Senator Francisco, you may move your motion or close on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, because 3 years would provide different times during the term. If you got that in the last year of a Senate term, then, and committee chairs changed, then you're not getting that information again. So I appreciate the discussion, and I move the amendment.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion to amend Senate Bill 58 with the balloon that we see before us. All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We do have so we will just get a motion by the chair to allow for our reviser what I'm going to call a technical amendment. You will notice, and she pointed it out to me on line 28, page 6, it says Standing Committee on Natural Resources. It says the Senate Standing Committee. It should say the Senate Standing Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources. So it would be a technical amendment, so we don't have a balloon, but we would give the reviser the authority for technical amendments on this legislation, not just the one that I mentioned. So I will make that as a form of a motion. Is there a second? Second by Senator Francisco. Discussion on the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Further amendments on the legislation? Seeing none, committee, what is your wish with Senate Bill 58? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that the committee recommend favorably for passage Senate Bill 58 as amended.
Motion by Titus, seconded by Francisco. Discussion on the motion to pass the bill out favorably as amended. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. So the legislation will be headed to the floor of the Senate, or at least to a place on the calendar. I have nothing additional for us today, committee, so you've got a few minutes to go to your office, make some phone calls, answer some emails or something like that. Senator Starnes, did you have?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to recognize I'm pretty proud of Taylor Nickel, a former student at Alamo Bunsey Schools. I didn't take the opportunity to recognize her, but I'm pretty proud of her. She's doing a heck of a job.
Okay. Well, thank you, Senator Starnes, and that really, I appreciate that endorsement. Do you endorse all of your students that way? That's fine. You don't.
No.
Okay. With that, committee, we are adjourned.